I've been thinking about it and I think that this is the most fascinating Indian-made motorcycle I've ever seen. It's called the Bajaj Freedom. The name itself is interesting, which we'll get to in a bit. But this is effectively the world's first CNG motorcycle. Before we talk about all the other things, including how interesting it looks, let's just get straight to the platform and talk about how this works. Effectively, you have a petrol engine. It is a brand new engine. Bajaj has created a sloper design, which is what you see on the Splendor, the very famous Hero Honda engine. Today a Hero engine used to be a Honda engine. It's the same sloper engine because it makes space for the cylinder that has to reside under the seat. Now you're probably wondering, where does the cylinder fit? Because Bajaj has designed this bike really well. Like I said, it is under this long seat. Now if you come over here, you'll see this large cylinder down there. This is a 2 kilo cylinder. Now don't mistake that for the weight of the cylinder. The cylinder itself weighs about 16 kgs. It can hold 2 kilos of CNG gas. Total weight of this is about 18 kilos. Now let me get that seat back in there. Okay, 2 kg cylinder, and up front here you have a 2-liter petrol tank. Bajaj claims an overall range of about 330 kilometers. How have they arrived at that? Well, they tell us that the official government-rated range for this on CNG is about a little over 100 kilometers per kilo. So that means you've got more than 200 on just CNG alone. Interestingly, Bajaj tells us that unlike petrol, riding on the real world actually gives better results, and they've seen up to 115 kilometers per kg of CNG. We'll have to test that, but effectively it means that you should be able to run well over 200 kilometers on one tank full. Most commuter customers don't usually fill up their tanks, and they do tend to frequently fill, so they should be okay with that, although the lines at CNG pumps may be an issue. Nevertheless, we then have a petrol engine which Bajaj says has an efficiency of about 65 kpl. So combined, well over 300. Right, what about the actual engine itself? Well, in terms of specifications, it's definitely not the highest in the 125cc segment. You've got about 9.5 horsepower and 9.7 Newton meters of torque. And that is something to consider because this bike weighs quite a bit. Silent start. And exhaust, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing alien, but a nice sounding exhaust. There are a few things that do make it interesting. Now, before we move on to actual dynamics aspects, let's show you this. There is an interesting switch out here that shows you petrol or CNG. And Bajaj has put in a lot of work into making sure that you can switch between fuels on the move. You don't have to stop and do it. You can even start the bike in CNG mode, you can ride in CNG mode alone, or you can ride in petrol mode. How do you fill it up? That's another important question. And again, Bajaj has engineered this really well. Petrol on this side, CNG out here. Very convenient. Now, on to more typical motorcycle things. How much does this bike weigh? Because that cylinder is quite heavy. Well, this top model with the disc brake, Bajaj tells us, is about 147 kilos. That is a lot more than the typical 125cc bike. I don't think that's going to be much of an issue for most customers because they will learn to get used to that. This might be more of a challenge. With the layout of the motorcycle, the seat height is about 825 mm, and we have a few shorter riders here who tell us that yes, it is tall, it's not impossible, but it is tall, and that is something you need to keep in mind. Now let's talk about features in general. At the front, you have a funky looking LED headlamp. You've got a reverse LCD display out here. This is a new unit. I've not seen this on any other Bajajs, and nice big numbers, very easy to read. There is also Bluetooth compatibility, although I'm not sure if that's available on all variants. The three variants are disc brake with LED headlamp, front drum brake with LED headlamp, and a drum brake without an LED headlamp. Another feature that's nice is that you have a USB charging port up front. Right. Now I'd like to talk about the overall design of this motorcycle because it's not really what we were expecting. We thought that this would be a rather commuter-y thing because Bajaj is effectively making it a bike that's appealing based on cost. But no, this is a genuinely good-looking motorcycle. In fact, from many elements, it reminds me of a motard or an off-road bike with this long flat seat, short fuel tank up front. That is interesting, but what I also like and what makes it look very premium is the trellis frame. This is probably the most affordable bike in the world with a trellis frame. Bajaj hasn't just done that for design, they've also done it for protection because that tank needs to be protected. Bajaj showed us some videos of this bike going through some really grueling crash tests. Those included it being run over by a 10-ton truck. It also went through a 1.5-ton crash test and a whole lot more. In total, it has passed 11 tests for safety, and they are very confident that you don't need to worry. Back to the design element, you've got a fairly small exhaust out here, a neat hugger at the back, clean looking alloy wheels, a nice bit of cladding for the swing arm. You've got a kickstart which commuter customers will appreciate, and a pretty solid bash guard for the engine. that is the Bajaj Freedom. There's a lot we've learned today, but there's a lot more that we need to learn. We will be riding this bike very soon. Our reviews should go out in the middle of July. And I'm really intrigued to see how this bike performs in the real world. This is a really interesting bike, and that's also because Bajaj has priced it really well. The top model is 1.1 lakh rupees at showroom. The middle level model is about 1.05, and the base model with the drum brake is 95,000 rupees at showroom. That is still more expensive than the typical 125cc commuter, about 20,000 rupees based on which bike you look at. But you're making significant cost savings with the running costs if Bajaj's numbers are anything to go by.